friends. My name is Julia. My pronouns are they, them. I have a design business that's really new, so don't get too excited. It's called Knitney Knits and Needlework. And I have also been on FlossTube for almost 10 years now, maybe 9. This is not a cross stitch video. This is a knitting video. In which I'm going to introduce this new series called Sock Seminars. And I decided to begin this series of videos because I love knitting. I love talking about knitting. And I love sharing my knowledge about knitting. And I kind of feel that as fiber artists, whether we are knitters, crocheters, spinners, weavers, stitchers, we have an obligation to share our knowledge, because without people sharing their knowledge and craftsmanship, we wouldn't be here doing those things. So I've been toying with the idea of doing something like this for a little while, and what finally made me say, okay, screw it, I'm just gonna do it, and it's not gonna be glamorous, and it's not gonna be all, it's just gonna be me and my iPhone camera, some yarn, and a whole lot of hope. I feel sad when I hear people talk about how, oh, I really want to try to knit socks, but oh, it's really intimidating, or oh, it's really scary, and oh, just the feel that quote is it makes me sad because it's just socks. And I recognize that it's kind of invalidating for me to say, oh, it's just socks. So I thought, well, what can I do or say that's actually helpful? The thing is, if you can knit in the round, you can knit socks. If you have knit my Pine Barrens cowl, you can knit socks. If you have knit a hat, you can knit socks. Sock knitting is the same thing, just with smaller yarn and smaller needles. Same thing, just smaller. So here's the breakdown. In a series of videos, maybe 4 to 5, we'll see, I am going to walk you through the process of knitting a sock, a plain vanilla sock. Nothing fancy. And this is my plain vanilla sock. Some people's plain vanilla socks have different ribbing, different heels, different toes, but they're all basically, a plain vanilla sock is just heel, plain knitting for the leg and the foot, a heel, and a toe. There are no specialty stitch, there's no special stitch pattern, there's no lace. It's just knitting around and around. So yeah, from start to finish, and my hope is that you'll knit along with me. I'm planning to make these videos every week to 10 days. Life happens, y'all know. So you don't have to feel rushed. And we're going to start by talking about yarn, needles, and gauge. So saddle up. Let's knit some socks. Okay, friends, so in this episode of MacGyver, our hero discovered that the little tripod with bendy legs that they had to film things like this has gone missing, and so therefore the phone is sandwiched between some floss boxes and a box of mini skeins of yarn from an Advent box. And this is, I have a very small window of space to work with here. But we're just gonna make this happen. Here, look at something pretty while I dash across the room and get my sock back. One sec. Oh man, when I said this wasn't going to be glamorous, I was not kidding, and I apologize. Okay, so here we have a sock. It's got a cuff, it's got a leg, it's got a heel. This is a heel flap. There are many kinds of heels. This is a heel flap. I think this is a very fine heel. I think it is easy for the beginner sock knitter to learn. I think it is sturdy. It lasts a long time. And yeah, I have good things to say about it. It's a favorite of mine. You'll notice there's a line of decreases here. There's one on the opposite side. There's a foot and there's a toe. This is a basic wedge toe. Again, there are many toes. I think this is a good one for a beginner, but and it's probably the most common toe that I use when I am just knitting a plain sock, or indeed when I am designing socks. So that is the anatomy of a sock. Now, a couple of things. We're going to be talking about gauge in a minute, and the reason we're going to be talking about gauge and why gauge is so important, especially for socks, is that when I knit a pair of socks, the expectation I have is that those socks are going to last a minimum of 5 years, at minimum. I have some socks that I knit probably 7 years ago that are finally starting to wear out. The reason for that is this is knit at a much denser gauge than a lot of other knitting. I like a pair of socks to have at least 8 stitches per inch. Because the tighter the fabric is, the sturdier it's going to be. When we're talking about knitting socks, something that we're going to wear on our feet, something that's going to get a lot of wear and tear, going to have a lot of traffic, we want something that is sturdy. We want something that is durable and that's going to last a long time. Now, that is really just like my personal opinion, but honestly, if you're going to, if you're going to spend upwards of 6 hours knitting something for somebody or for yourself, you want it to stand the test of time a little bit. So related to that, when we're talking about sock durability, we need to look at the yarn that we're choosing. This yarn, I don't have the tag to this specific ball anymore, but I do have this ball, which is just the same yarn in a different colorway. This is Wisdom Yarns Wacky Sacky. I think that this might not be available anymore. I got it on clearance from Webb's. Now, something you might notice, at least something that I have noticed recently when I'm shopping for sock yarn, is that merino wool is the current hotness. And you're going to see it in a lot of sock yarn. And I love merino wool. I think it's great. It's luxurious. It's buttery. I think it's a terrible choice for socks, unless you pair it with something. If you find a sock yarn that is merino wool combined with something like nylon, knock yourself out. Go ahead and buy that yarn. That nylon is going to give that merino wool the stability that it needs. I don't have any actual raw fiber to show you to hand. For the next video, I might bring some out. When you're looking at the fiber content of a yarn, you want something that has a very long, you want each fiber to be long. And for a lot of wools, that's the case. Shetland is a great example. Merino is actually, the staple is very short and it's very fluffy, and that is why merino is so delicious and buttery and soft. When you have a fiber that is delicious and buttery and soft, what you are getting in luxuriousness, you are losing in durability. Which is why when you're making, when a company makes yarn for socks that includes merino wool, if they're smart, they add something into that wool. They mix it, they cart it together, so that with something, in this case for Wacky Sacky, it is merino, bamboo, and nylon. That gives that merino the stability, the longer staple length, to kind of help it along. Over here I have, oh look, and a swatch, because I do that a lot. This is some West Yorkshire spinners. This is just their signature. West Yorkshire Spinners does make some hand-painted yarns as well, but they also have a really nice, just workhorse solid color. This is blue-faced Leicester and nylon. This just says wool and nylon. A lot of the time, if you see a sock yarn that's just wool, it's probably going to be blue-faced Leicester. I like this a lot, so that's a good choice as well. Nylon in a sock yarn is pretty much never going to be a bad idea. It really helps it out. This is a self-striping yarn from one of my favorite dyers. This is from Lauren at Valkyrie Fibers in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. This is from her Star Wars line. This is superwash and nylon. The ratio you want is you want 1/4 to 20% of the yarns, of the fiber content to be nylon, to really help that merino out. What else do I have? I think those are the examples I had. Oh wait, no, there's one over here. This is Must Stash yarn out of Canada, I believe. And they are, yeah, this is a 75-25 merino and nylon. This is, what is this? This is from their Star Wars collection, which I think is still available. Yeah, this is Stardust. I love Jyn Erso. Anyway, okay. Back on track, Julia. So yeah, for fiber content for yarns, you want good plain wool, or you want something that is not good plain wool, but with some nylon in to give it some stability. Another thing I want to talk about is the number of plies the yarn has. So let's look. I haven't woven my ends in yet because I am a human wasteland. Can you see? Yeah, I think you can. This isn't just one strand of wool. This is several strands of wool plied together. This makes for great sock yarn because, again, stability. This yarn will hold up a lot longer on your feet than, say,
this yarn, which is really lovely. It's from Marinated Yarns. It's an absolute crime that I have not started knitting with this yet. 100% merino. Already know that's not going to be good for socks, but also this is just a single ply. It's beautiful yarn. I'm not knocking this yarn at all, but this is one piece of wool. This is a single ply. Nobody plied this together. This is straight off the wheel, or the electric wheel, however they do it. This is one strand of yarn. Like, it's not plied together with anything else, so it's not going to be as durable. This would make a lovely colorwork hat. I believe this this lovely palette is actually meant to be a colorwork cowl, which I will knit one of these days. It would make a lovely hat, or some pretty mitts. This is not something that you want to put on your feet and walk around in and shove into boots and sneakers, and, or if you're me, Birkenstocks. It's not going to hold up, and you're going to be sad. Again, not knocking this yarn. It is beautiful. I cannot wait to make something beautiful that is not going to get beat up too much with that. So let's look at, so again, this is the same yarn as this yarn, as you can see. I'm trying to get things to focus here. There you can see the multiple plies. And here, let's look at West Yorkshire Spinners. Do you see? Yeah. Some yarn is just two ply, just two strands plied together. And while that's not probably what I would say is the best, I would not knock a yarn for only having a couple of plies, because it's certainly better than one. But in my perfect world, for my perfect socks, I would say that at least 4 ply makes for the sturdiest sock. Let's look at mustache here. Sorry about the camera, y'all. Yeah, that's several plies. So again, a good yarn. I think that's I feel like I've made my point in terms of when you are shopping for sock yarn. Those are the things I want you to think about. I want you to think about fiber content, and I want you to think about how many plies are in each yarn. So again, you want something like that for socks. You want something like this for a cowl, a hat, something that's not going to be, something that the yarn isn't going to be abraded as much. Okay, now let's talk about actual gauge and how to knit a swatch, and why I feel swatching is so important. I think it's essential, honestly. If you're going to put, someone just rang my doorbell, and we're back. Sorry about that. My partner said yesterday, I think I'm going to order a new printer, and I said that's fine, and it showed up today. So hooray for Staples, I guess. Anyway, swatching. Swatching is vital for good knitting, and I will shout that to the rafters until the day I die. I know a lot of people don't like doing it. They feel it's a waste of time. It's a pain. They just want to knit the fun, new, shiny thing that they want to knit. What I say to you is, do you want to knit the fun, new, shiny thing you want to knit in a crappy way? Or do you want to knit the fun, new, shiny thing and have it be something that you fall in love with right away and block it lightly and put it on and enjoy and go on your merry way? Or do you want to be heartbroken because you either run out of yarn or you realize that it is either comically huge or comically small? You have to rip out and guess what? Figure out your gauge problem anyway, and continue on, or in some cases, just chuck it in a plastic bin and be mad at it and never look at it again. I mean, the brutal truth is that's like those are your two options. So why not get the fiddly, annoying bit out of the way first, and then have a much better chance of having something satisfying at the end of it. Now, as someone who's been knitting since they were 5 and really seriously since they were about 20, the older I get, the more I enjoy knitting swatches just for the information that they tell me, and especially as a designer. But right now, all you need to know is that you want probably about 8-9 inches per inch. How do you do that? You knit a swatch. You cast on about with a fingering weight sock yarn, and I'll start with 2.25 millimeter needles. Cast on about 24-25 stitches and knit until it is at least a square, preferably a rectangle. A couple of things. If what you are knitting is knit in the round, like a sock, you're knitting a tube, you're knitting around and around and around. It's not like knitting a scarf where you're knitting back and then you're turning your work and going back the other way, and then turning your work and going back the other way. You need to swatch in the manner in which you're going to knit the object that you are knitting. You don't want to knit back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on your swatch when your swatch is for something that is knit in the round. Conversely, you don't want to swatch in the round for something that you're going to knit flat. Julia, how the hell do I knit a swatch in the round? Well, the back of your swatch is going to look like this. And that's okay. Here, I will demonstrate. You're going to get, I'm going to knit with a, hi Pippin. There. Hi, bud. Yeah, this isn't going to work, okay? You need to, no. All right, hold please. And we're back. Okay. I just went ahead and cast on however many this is, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. I use the long tail cast on because that is my preferred method of casting on. And this is just some old, this is Sadie of Sadie Ruin dyed this back when she was still dyeing yarn. Okay, so I cast on, and you can see that my tail is over here and my working yarn is over here. Now, normally, if I were going to be swatching flat, I would turn this around and go this way. But I'm not going to be I'm not swatching something flat. I'm swatching for something in the round. So what am I going to do? I'm going to move my stitches towards the end of this needle. I'm going to pick up my working yarn. I'm going to loosely bring it behind my work, not really tight, not really tight. You want to leave some play back there. And then I'm going to start knitting. And when I get to the end of this row, what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to slide all my stitches towards the right tip of this double-pointed needle. I'm going to move my working yarn loosely forward, or loosely to where the front of the knitting is going to be. And I'm going to knit, and that is how you swatch in the round, because notice what I'm doing. When you are knitting stockinette and you're knitting it flat, you knit one row and then you purl one row, and then you knit one row and then you purl one row. When you're knitting in the round, you're knitting stockinette, you're just knitting. It's just the knit stitch over and over and over and over again, because you're knitting a tube, and so it naturally creates stockinette stitch. All right. Almost at the end of this row, and you should be able to see what I'm talking about here. Okay, so that is 2 rows in the round, and as you can see back here, you've got the purl nubbling that is usual for the back of a stockinette, and then you've got your tails of your working yarn. And when you do that for long enough, the back of your swatch is going to look like that. Easy, right? Then what you're going to do when it's at least a square, preferably a rectangle, what you're going to do is you are going to take some waste yarn, any kind of waste yarn, put it on a tapestry needle, thread it through your live stitches, as you can see I've done here. And then what you're going to do, my darling, is you are going to wash the swatch. Yes, I said you are going to wash and block your swatch. Yes, you have to wash your swatch. I promise you have to wash your swatch, because it will not be accurate if you don't wash your swatch. Put it in some tepid water with a little drop of wool wash if you have it, a little tiny drop of Dawn dish soap or whatever dish soap you have in with it. Let it soak for maybe half an hour. Squeeze it out, give it a little rinse maybe if you used a dish soap, and then spread it out as flat as you can get it onto a towel and let it dry. I think it's a great idea to wash your little swatch before bed so that you don't have to be impatient waiting for it to dry, because you will be asleep. What else? And then what you're going to do is you're going to take a ruler. You're going to lay it flat. You're going to take a ruler and you are going to measure how many stitches you have in an inch. Pro tip, don't start measuring from over here. Don't start measuring down here. Measure right in the middle. And that's how you do it. And then what do you do with this? Well, you can unravel it and then knit with it. It has told you what you needed to know. That's what I'm going to do with this whenever I start knitting the project that is earmarked to go with this yarn. That's a lot of ums, sorry. So that is that's the basics of swatching for socks. I know it sounds like a pain, but I promise you it is worth it. Every once in a while, you're going to come upon a time where you don't have to swatch. For example, I'm trying to find a yarn. So this yarn, I have knit probably about 10 pairs of socks with the sock yarn from Valkyrie Fibers. I am confident that I'm confident that I could just pick up this yarn and start knitting a sock with it without swatching, using the normal needles that I use, because experience has taught me what my gauge consistently is with this yarn and those needles. However, if I were to get, say, a new pair of needles, even if they're the same size, I would swatch because it can change. Another good example, here's another thing. For the longest time when I was a sock knitter, my preferred method of knitting socks was with double pointed needles. And I decided to give knitting with 2 circular needles a try. And number one, I found that is my current preferred method for knitting socks. So always try new things. You might find you like it. But because I was changing the method by which I was knitting, everything I knew about swatching was everything I knew about my gauge was going to change because I was knitting in a different way. So do you see, like, this is why I harp on swatching so much, because the littlest thing can affect your gauge. And there's really no reason to make yourself sad when you can do something so simple to prevent yarn tragedies. Okay, friends, that is it for the yarn and gauge portion of this sock seminar. I hope it was helpful. If anything was unclear or you want me to go in a little more depth, please let me know in the comment section below. I'm going to clean things up and film a little outro. So I'll see you again in just a second.
I hope that was helpful. I hope that was informative. If it was neither of those things or only one of those things, or if you have questions, please let me know. I would my purpose in this is to make sock knitting clearer. And if I'm not doing that, I'd love to know. A final thought I have for you is that I want you to keep in mind that if you decide to go on this sock knitting journey, the worst thing that will happen to you is that you will discover that you don't like knitting socks. That's the worst possible outcome. And when you think about it, is that really a bad thing? Is learning something new about your preferences a bad thing? You know, maybe you find it boring. Maybe you're not gonna like knitting with small needles and small yarn. I totally get it. As someone who absolutely loathes knitting with huge needles and super bulky yarn, I get it. And life is entirely too short and precious to do something with your free time that you do not like. Now, you might say, but Julia, how can that be the worst thing that happens? Like, what if my needle slips out and I drop a bunch of stitches? I'm going to prepare you for that. I've got a trick for you. I've got a couple of tricks for you. So that if that happens, is it going to be annoying? Yes. Is it going to be a complete catastrophe? No. So don't worry about that. Yeah, those are my final thoughts. Like, number one, the things you're afraid of, there's a hack for that. And the worst thing that can happen is you're going to think, not for me. So not so bad, right? Okay, my friends, I will see you. I honestly don't know. Life is lifing. At the latest, I will see you in June when we will actually cast on and start knitting. So you have time to find yourself some yarn and you know what to look for, and find yourself some needles and swatch, and you'll figure it out. Be well, my friends. Happy knitting. Bye-bye.